playlisters, today we're doing something Dolly Parton mastered decades ago. Keeping it sweet, keeping it sharp, and making sure everybody listens. So pour yourself a little cup of ambition because we are working overtime today. This is Political Playlist Happy Hour. Cue the music, Anna.
Working 9 to 5. Da, 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 da.
Welcome to Political Playlist
All right, are we ready, guys?
Happy Hour.
Happy hour.
We fucked that up so bad.
Sounds like we forgot some of those lyrics.
Yeah,
Hey,
I
everybody, and welcome to Political Playlist Happy Hour. I'm Michael Kristoff.
I'm Anna Muskie-Goldwyn.
And I'm Anthony Barquette.
Well, R.I.P. Dolly, man.
Ugh, guys, I will say I shed a tear.
Really?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
It's just like one of those things where you feel like, oh, this
Like
person.
you knew her.
Well, yeah, kind of, right?
Yeah.
But also, I think just symbolically, like it's so hard in this current day and age to like think of a person who just there's no negativity around at all,
Right.
and like to sort of imagine that positive light like extinguishing is just very sad. And you know, I was like, I shed a tear because I was on Instagram tapping through people's posting about it. And the first time that I came across someone with a post with, I will always love you, I was like, oh,
Yeah.
She did a lot of good too. Like she used her influence.
So much good. I mean, she had
in a positive
millions
way.
of books for kids.
Yeah.
And like, I was reading Jane Fonda's.
Yeah, do you want to talk a little bit about that for our listeners who maybe don't know that element about her?
So she had this library the imagination library that she put together over years, where every year she would just distribute all these books to kids because she felt like her father was very restricted in his life by not being able to read. And so she really felt that like the value of having literacy and having reading be a part of children's lives was so important. And I think that it's one of those things that if you're in her position, you know, it's not that difficult to do, right? And it's like a very simple thing that she was able to contribute, but you can only imagine how many lives she was able to change and, you know, people she was able to affect through that in terms of building their future. So, I mean, it's just one of the many things.
It goes back to something we've talked a lot about on this podcast and just personally among us, where, you know, you see people who have a massive megaphone and, you know, you say, okay, well, how are they using that platform? How are they using that megaphone mode? Are they using it to do good? Are they using it to do self-interested things? And, you know, you look at Dolly Parton using her platform and megaphone for just incredible good, providing free books to kids until they were age 5. And then you look at, say, somebody like Elon Musk, who's cutting all these U.S. aid programs under some false pretense. So it's like, oh, wow, this is sad when somebody who really was such like a ray of light in a positive way dies. And, you know, it's like, wow, yeah, she wasn't, at the end of the day, 80 years old. I mean, it's old, but it's not in today's day and age. That's not all that old. You know, she still feels like she had some
she's
years
still pretty
left.
young.
Yeah.
Did I hear this correctly? Did she meet with JD Vance a few days ago?
Wow.
Heard it here first. JD Vance killed Dolly Parton.
Yeah. Nice reference to JD meeting with the Pope.
You know what I will
right before they die.
Well, wait, who else? Who was the other person?
It was the Pope, and then it was somebody else. It was like,
who was it?
It was like some like, oh yeah.
Wait. Oh no, who was it?
Who
we
was
have
it?
to remember this. Okay,
Yeah.
Anthony's looking it up. But while he does, I just wanted to say that, you know, there's no greater signifier to me of how beloved and I think healing the idea of Dolly Parton is, in that I first read Jane Fonda's tribute to her, who knew her very well.
Yeah.
And in it, she used a phrase that I wrote down because I wanted to repeat it, that she was a voluptuous embodiment of empathy, which I loved.
That's great. A nice reference to
and then within
some
the
of
same
Dolly's most prominent features.
100%, which Dolly herself spoke endlessly about.
Mhm.
And
we're talking about her boobs, Anthony.
her boobies, baby, her boobies.
I know. I know.
But then, like, literally within the same couple minutes, saw a video, I think it was a news organization had posted, that the Trump White House was lowering the flag to half-mast. So you have Jane Fonda, who like couldn't be more antithetical to the current administration, saying kind words as the Trump administration White House is lowering the flag to half-mast out of respect. And I think that there are almost zero people, I think, who can create that kind of well-wishing from such a disparate swath of the American people. And I guess like what I think about is that we all keep saying, oh, we need healing, we need community, we need to like, turn towards one another, whatever. And it's one of those crazy things where you're like, well, maybe in the death of Dolly Parton, some of us can find the courage to do that, because it can be hard.
I also think there's sort of a fun little story I read that she was married to her husband for almost 59 years, Carl Dean, who died last year. And they met the first day she moved to Nashville, which I think is like such an amazingly sweet love story that honestly, I mean, obviously she's somebody of another generation. I don't think, growing up, it wasn't like, oh, Dolly Parton's a big part of our lives. But, I didn't know that about her. And I feel like her whole personal, relationship, family romance was sort of never part of her real story. That was always very private.
It's kind of like Oprah and Stedman. It's kind of like these iconic women who just fall in love and have these amazing partners, and it doesn't have to be, front page news, which is sort of beautiful. Okay, wait, Anthony, before we move on, who else did JD Vance kill?
I can't find it.
Wait,
honestly.
it was someone else though, right?
I thought it was. It's saying there were like theories that he met with Epstein before he died.
Oh, that doesn't mean
no, there was somebody else who was prominent.
All right, well, if
it
you
was
listen,
like,
was it Diane Keaton?
No,
I guarantee JD Vance and Diane Keaton were not hanging out.
They did not meet. No.
Well, listener, if you want to write into us and DM us who that mystery foregone person is, please let us know.
Yeah.
But R.I.P. Dolly, and in her name, we will live with kindness for as long as we can until Anthony gets angry at something again.
Yes.
Yes. On that note, playlisters, let's discuss how to talk about mail-in balloting. And
is that what it's called?
Mail-in balloting?
Mail-in voting.
No, let's try that again. Listen, playlisters, let's discuss how to talk about mail-in voting. I think that's maybe a better topic or description.
Yes, that's correct.
And we're talking about mail-in voting and mail-in ballots. And particularly, we are talking about this in context with a Supreme Court ruling that happened on Monday of this week. In a 6-3 conservative majority decision, they temporarily lifted a lower court injunction that blocked key pieces of a Trump executive order from this past March that was engineered to target mail-in voting. So I want to talk about the piece of the court and then what the fallout of this is. But basically, the executive order, to just contextualize it here for a sec, the executive order basically mandated that the post office could create a federal system for voting, for mail-in voting, which obviously runs contrary to voting being a state run thing. And they would use barcodes, unique tracking systems, and basically a voter list that would name all of the federally approved absentee voter participants. So this would be done via who is a confirmed citizen, according to the federal government. And effectively, this executive order is directing the post office to create a final federal checkpoint, as it were, for all mail-in voting. So the court ruled that Trump's policy, it is not necessarily constitutional or unconstitutional. What they decided on was that the 23 Democratic-led states that were challenging this order had sued too early. So last Friday, the post office implemented their final guidelines for this new policy and this new practice. And effectively, what the Supreme Court is saying is that you challenge this too early. You now have to go back and re-challenge this based on what the final guidelines of this policy are that were put out on Friday of last week. So in the dissent, the 3 liberal justices, with Ketanji Brown Jackson authoring the dissent, warned that waiting until this close to an election will harm the voting process, the fairness, and the integrity of our upcoming election, which is in 3 months, 2.5. So I guess my first question to you guys is, am I crazy, or does this seem crazy for the post office to have a list of eligible voters?
Well, this is what is so why there's a couple of things that are so wild about this to me. One is that the court is not actually even ruling on the legality of what Trump wants to do,
right,
with, as you said, essentially 2 months until the election. So now there's going to be another round of court. This isn't going to be solved before the midterms, and it's just going to cause chaos because that is, the courts don't move quickly enough, frankly. But to the point about the sort of timing of all of this and the post office-ness of all of it, what I think is really frustrating and kind of like just feels really slimy is that it is written in the Constitution that states run their own elections. This rule is kind of trying to circumvent that fact of American government by using the post office, which is federally run, to be this final checkpoint in conjunction with the Department of Homeland Security, which, yes, should be monitoring citizenship status of people, but typically has no role in elections in the United States. And so what is difficult, I think, as a kind of citizen to think about is, and I mean this with all due respect, but are we really putting all of our eggs in the post office basket? Like, I don't know the last time you guys have been to the post office.
Yeah, when was the last time you had a favorable experience at the post office?
There's some people.
Yes.
I gotta imagine working at the post office is probably one of the most thankless, annoying jobs that these people have. I never knock them for having not a great attitude, but I do. They're not they're not like famous for their efficiency.
No, or their attitudes. Really,
okay, fine. You know what? Sometimes you get a very nice post office person.
I'm going to die on that.
Sometimes there's really good ones.
Yeah, sometimes there's really good ones. But anyway, my point is, like, this is the only federal avenue really that the Trump administration can use, because there's no other even remotely legal way to do this through the federal government. And so now, I mean, I asked this before we were preparing for this episode. I was like, so what is happening? Literally, there's just going to be people at the post office like picking mail-in ballots out of piles that aren't the proper ballots.
So let me explain that. So basically, this was a little confusing too, but I think still very alarming. I was thinking that this was directing the post office to seize mail-in ballots upon the voter voting and sending them in, which is obviously scary.
Yeah.
But I think so. It's not that. It's before the mail-in ballots are even sent the post office is screening who they're going to. So if Anna, you're on the approved list, the post office will send it to you and deliver it to you. Anthony, if you're not on the approved list and they get a ballot in their sorting pile that says Anthony Barquette and it's a mail-in ballot, they will not send that to you. So equally as terrifying, I think, because they're basically dictating who is going to receive mail-in ballots and who isn't. So it's not about if you receive one, then they're going to intercept it upon your mailing it in. It's before you even get one, they're going to decide whether or not you get one based on this list they're given by the Trump administration.
And what we should reiterate is that a lot of this is stemming from the sort of fallacy of non-citizens voting in elections. And, you know, I will say, just to give a little anecdote, there are processes that need to be looked at in this. For example, Billy, my husband, used to be a Nevada citizen. Now he's a resident. Now he's a California resident. He did get a mail-in ballot in Nevada. I don't think the last election, but maybe the election before that, like after he had changed his residency. And so it's like, yeah, that's not great. At the same time, if someone had tried to fill out that ballot in Nevada, there are these checks when someone is looking at the voter decision, you know, the decisions on the ballots and the ballots that are coming in that would have weeded out anything that was fraudulent, because the majority of any fraudulent voting has always been caught, and it's a very small percentage. So this is, again, there's this like weird fear mongering around this idea of like non-citizens or extra votes or whatever happening, when my opinion is, shouldn't there be a lot of attention being directed towards like some other things?
Right.
I don't know. It just seems like a waste of time.
I think an important thing to mention, just real quick,
let Anthony speak.
I know.
No, it's fine. I'm good. I'm not even here.
No, go ahead. I'll qualify this in a moment.
I actually prefer it this way, honestly.
Okay.
Keep going.
Well, I was just going to say that
no, stop.
The
Wait,
U.S.
really?
Post Office cannot actually start enforcing this because there's a separate nationwide injunction that remains in effect. You know, there's so many court challenges going on, but this was, you know, an immediate decision by the Supreme Court saying, hey, if you're going to challenge this, you have to wait till the final thing to challenge and then come back to us. But yeah, anyway, Anthony, your thoughts?
I think this is pretty shady.
Yeah.
And I think with how like politicized now the positions are in our government, it definitely puts less trust in there, because we all know the Department of Homeland Security, which didn't really seem like it before, but it's definitely now in the back pocket of the president. And hey, when a Democrat gets in power, they might be doing the same going forward. And we're going to trust the Department of Homeland Security, who's been actually like to opine on whose ballots are right, when they've also been abducting like American citizens.
Yeah, clearly their understanding of who's citizens and who's not is not perfect.
Right.
So
That's
I'm
a
going to go with
point. Yeah.
They're not the best group to be putting together a list even.
Yeah.
So I think they should maybe have the opportunity to, once the ballots get to an area, like there should maybe be 3 departments that look at them and find discrepancies. And that might allow for some checks and balances, but not one checking another here.
What I think is really notable about this, and you mentioned Judge Jackson's dissent, and actually she wrote like a separate dissent from Kagan and Sotomayor, who basically just dissented kind of in, I don't know what you would say, like they didn't really write anything about it. They just dissented. And then Judge Jackson went above and beyond and wrote a very long dissent. And in it, she talked about something called the Purcell principle. Do you guys know what that is?
I have no idea.
So the Purcell principle is a doctrine in the U.S. Supreme Court that talks about how to guide federal courts in terms of election law when there is an election approaching. And so it comes from a case called Purcell versus Gonzalez in 2006 that was about an Arizona voter ID law. And the Ninth Circuit had blocked the law shortly before an election. And then the Supreme Court reversed that decision, saying that lower courts should not be making rulings around election laws so close to the elections themselves. And so what this principle says, again, it's not a law, it's not a specific sort of mandate of the court, but what it says is that courts, Supreme Court down, should generally not be issuing any rulings that alter election procedures in periods leading up to an election. So it doesn't specify what that period is. It doesn't talk about any sort of other details or specifics that would offer some sort of like regulatory guidelines, but it's this overarching principle that Judge Jackson referenced, basically saying, if we issue election-related decisions so close to an election, we, the judicial system, are becoming agents of chaos when it comes to our election and potentially affecting the outcomes of elections, the ability for people to vote, the ability for people to understand how they can vote, which obviously relates to this case. So I thought that was interesting because there has been a lot of criticism of this principle, essentially just saying that like it's kind of this like amorphous rule that doesn't have enough specificity to it to really be implemented. But at the same time, if you just think about it logically, at least for me, I'm like, I agree with it, right? That if we have these judicial rulings happening so close to elections like this one, that now if you're in a state where you have a Democratic governor and you typically get a mail-in ballot, most likely your Democratic governor is not going to comply with this executive order. And what the executive order says is that if your governor does not comply, then we are going to essentially take over the distribution of mail-in ballots in that state. And so as a voter, you're like, okay, well, am I going to get my ballot? You know, it starts to raise a lot of questions. So I think that as much as there may be some detail missing from this Purcell principle, just when you take a step back as a normal person thinking about it in a common sense way, to me at least, it makes a lot of sense for the betterment of us all as voters.
I think something to talk about is the pretty resounding Democratic pushback on all of this. So on our playlist, there's about 30 Democrats have joined in a letter that was sent, again with the sending of the letters.
We love a letter.
They all joined a sternly worded letter in late July demanding that the U.S. Postal Service abandon this new policy. It's really everybody you can think of who we frequently talk about on here, and somebody who has been particularly aggressive in terms of the mail-in voting fight is Maxwell Frost. He is somebody who has really been beating this drum, and a lot of what he has been saying it stems from the fact that there's a lot of older people in his state, a lot of rural areas, that these older rural places rely on mail-in voting because it's just very difficult for them to get to actual polling places. And I think another area of this, like what is clearly voter suppression, is targeting colleges as well. And a couple of statistics I wanted to just read to you. I sent you guys a screenshot that I'm sure we'll post at some point, but of some key battleground states: Texas, Michigan, Iowa, and Ohio. 1.6 million college student voters are in the state of Texas. 483,000 in Michigan, 205,000 in Iowa, 382,000 in Ohio. Those are real numbers that can really impact an election. And I think what's interesting is when you look at this crackdown or this attempt to crack down on mail-in voting, and you look at it compared with states with strict voter ID laws that are requiring a passport and a birth certificate, a lot of these college students don't have those things.
Mhm.
So when you take away
I don't even think I have my birth certificate.
Right, exactly. So think about it. I mean, and what's interesting, here's an interesting stat on a lot of this voter ID law stuff, is that a lot of the states that have started to implement this are allowing state university student IDs to qualify as a valid ID. They are not allowing private universities and a lot of these HBCUs student IDs to qualify.
Weird.
Yeah. So again, like I think the not so secret
those
here,
HBCUs. Those
are historically black colleges and
colleges,
universities,
right?
and they're predominantly private. They're not,
they're not public universities.
Yeah. So this is clearly an attempt to suppress what is assumed to be a Democrat majority voting base, right? This is an attempt to say, okay, let's make it harder for college students to vote. A lot of them tend to vote Democrat. This helps Republicans. And I think that all of this was very much a part of Project 2025. A lot of the attempts at curbing mail-in balloting and voting were all part of that and expressly outlined. Obviously, it's worth noting that this particular Postal Service maneuver was not clearly specified there, but there was a whole chapter on how they want to go after mail-in balloting. So I think that this is yet another example of we've talked about on the show. We've done videos on the show. Folks need to realize that everything is in play right now as we head to these midterms, and everything is now being attempted, whether it is out in the open or behind the curtain. Everything is being tried right now. And I don't know about you, but and I don't want to like drum up doom and gloom here, but because I know we said we wouldn't do that because of Dolly, but
yeah,
I'm very, very concerned that we are just going to see a midterm election like we've never seen before. We're going to see voter suppression. We're going to see ICE agents at polling places. We are going to see the federal government going beyond their constitutional ability and interfering. And we're going to see lie after lie from this current administration about what it is they're doing and what they're trying to do. And I'm very concerned.
Going to be unprecedented.
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 I agree.
Well, the one thing I will say
word for you today?
It's the largest word I've used all day. Thank you.
Love it. The one thing I will say about this whole thing with the post office, at least, is that people should understand that this executive order has not gone into effect. It essentially is now going to be able to be challenged in the way that it was attempted to be challenged in June. And to me, the biggest takeaway, unfortunately, is that if you are someone who plans to vote in the midterms, you just need to be aware of the ways in which you can do that, which may or may not be the normal ways you're used to voting. And I think that is the biggest thing and inconvenience, unfortunately, on all of us, is that it might just take that little bit extra brain power to get your vote out there this year amidst a lot of this confusion and chaos. Yes.
Indeed. Well, on that note,
by the way, we should have said this at the beginning, but if you're tuning in, we usually do 2 episodes a week. But these fellas here had some scheduling problems.
We saw your video on Instagram today. And,
I'm just saying, we're doing a longer episode, so stay with us here.
But we're keeping it fun and spicy.
Spicy.
Anna, who is the politician on your playlist this week?
The politician on my playlist is Representative Jared Moskowitz from Florida's 25th District.
We love Florida. We don't love him. No, I love him. I think he's great.
He's the man.
Yeah, so this is what I wanted to talk about because I think Jared Moskowitz is a really interesting politician in this current Democratic climate. And the reason that I bring him up is that so he won his primary in Florida's newly drawn 25th district, which used to be pretty safely Democratic and now has become very competitive because of the mid-cycle redistricting that happened in Florida. So Jared won his primary where he had been challenged by a man named Oliver Larkin, who was a Democratic Socialist, I was about to say embraced, endorsed.
Yeah.
Okay, also
he
embraced.
was embraced as well.
He was embraced. Candidate, Jared won this election 63.5% to 36.5%. So he did win pretty handily in the district. And it, had just been following this pattern of these more far left candidates coming after more centrist, moderate Democrats like Jared Moskowitz. Moskowitz was particularly targeted because he is a ardent supporter of Israel and has, said and perhaps done things since this unfortunate situation in the Middle East has been unfolding in Gaza that a lot of these more far left candidates did not like. So he was someone that they felt that they needed to challenge. They were unsuccessful in doing that. And he will now be running against the mayor of Boca Raton, Scott Singer, who is a Republican mayor in the area.
Definitely has an accent.
He definitely says it like that.
With that last name.
Sorry,
Boca Raton.
Boca Raton. Probably is how he says it. Notably, Trump stayed out of this GOP primary, which is kind of interesting because I think that people see this as a really competitive district and maybe felt like Trump wasn't going to be helpful in endorsing any of these people. I will also say that Scott Singer got about a third of the vote and other two Republican candidates also got about a third. So this was not like a runaway victory for Scott Singer, who now will face Jared Moskowitz. Before I ask you gentlemen to talk, the reason I'm bringing Moskowitz up is because after he won this primary, he gave an interview on Fox Business, which is notable and interesting. And he said that he was responding to very notable left-wing streamer Hassan Piker, who had been talking about Moskowitz's race and had endorsed the other candidate. And Moskowitz said that he and these DSA supported wing of the party cannot coexist. And that he said, quote, that they weren't interested in winning the general election in my seat, they were interested in taking out a Democrat. And so my question to you guys, and the thing I think is really interesting to discuss here is Moskowitz right? Like, is this idea of we need to, in some parts of the country, have moderate candidates like him in order to win the general election, or is going full throat public against the DSA candidates something that maybe more mainstream moderate Democrats need to be careful of right now?
I mean, I think Jared Moskowitz is doing what we try and embody, which is wanting to hear from both sides and working with both sides. So I think he is one of the most effective politicians, what effective opposition should look like, where it's not just saying, oh, I hate this because Trump is talking about it. He actually is known to work with a lot of Republicans and be really effective in doing it. And I think that's given him this credible biography. But, I think for your guys, I think you'll remember this. Where he got started was DeSantis actually appointed him to run for emergency management in the state.
Right.
And he worked inside a Republican administration through the COVID response and hurricanes. And then that's when he was Florida's director of emergency management under DeSantis. Then he ran for Florida legislator as a county commissioner. and then he ended up running for Congress. So he's done a really like unusual for most Democrats where he like has resisted Trump in a smart and positive way, I would say. And he did that, right, by doing all these short clips and jokes and memorable one-liners when he was serving on the House Oversight Committee. But like the way, if I could put it simply, is he doesn't say like, if he's going to say Trump may be wrong about that, it doesn't mean Republicans are wrong about everything. And I think putting that distinction, going back to the Hassan comment, like we're just dividing the country way more.
Yeah. Let me give you some, I agree with everything you said, Anthony. And, I think you should speak more. I'm for it. But let me give you some stats here, because this is something that Jared points out. He says that DSA aligned members are only about 5% of House Democrats. And in fact, on the federal Democratic candidate level, there are only eight candidates who are running that are officially DSA backed endorsed candidates. 7 in the House, 1 in the Senate. Now, there's obviously Dr. Abdul, who we've talked about, who has flatly said he's not a DSA candidate, not DSA aligned, but they have come out and given him a little bit of support. And there's others who they're kind of tepidly supporting, even though those candidates aren't officially DSA affiliated. But I think that, like, Anna, to your question, I feel very strongly about this in that I think the right wants you to believe and wants other Republicans to believe that somehow the DSA has infiltrated the Democratic Party and taken over. It's why Fox News keeps having on John Fetterman to talk about like him saying, "Oh, the party left me behind," and all that. I just wholly reject the idea that the party is migrating en masse to this new radical left socialist agenda or policy. I think this is much more of a reflection of how bad people feel the current climate is, how bad they think Trump administration, how Trump and his policies are. I think it's how bad they think the chaos created by ICE, the uncertainty and strain of the economy on gas, food prices, medical insurance costs, etc. These voters are grasping for anything and everything. And in some of these primaries, they've grasped for the DSA candidate. And in some of them, they've grasped for the centrist like Jared Moskowitz. And I think it's less a reflection of, oh, this is where the party is shifting, and more of, hey, no one Democrat has painted and portrayed a clear message of what tomorrow looks like. They keep telling me how bad things are today under Trump. They haven't told me what their version of tomorrow looks like. So I'm just going with this guy who's telling me, oh, I'm going to have free grocery stores. Okay, sounds great. Or like this guy, hey, I'm going to abolish ICE. Okay, great. Like, I don't think this is a reflection of where Democrats are right now or where the future is. I think this is a wake-up call for Democrats saying, hey, Democrats are a fucking mess right now. You guys all have to get on the same page. And I think as we get through these midterms and as we start turning our focus to 2028, we're going to see these debates play out. And I think that's really good. I don't think that's a sign of weakness, because I think the winning messages will start to emerge from that. And the Democrats, from an electability standpoint, will emerge a stronger party because of that.
What I think is so interesting is, like, I agree with everything that you're saying, but this idea of like there's no message, that's because the message that is getting people is the message of these more far left candidates. And so I completely agree with you. And by the way, I completely agree with Anthony that I think Jared Moskowitz does a very brilliant job of exhibiting the kind of bipartisanship and open-mindedness that I personally want to see from more candidates. the thing that I think bothers me about this specific comment that he said is he's actually not creating that open arms, let's try to come to a consensus within his own party. He's saying, I can't coexist with these people who have challenged me in this primary, who are saying things that I don't agree with when it comes to some of the more far left agenda of the DSA or the candidates that they support. And so to me, he's actually going against what he's become so known for, which is being somebody who can kind of try to be a coalescer, not just between parties, but within his own party at this point. And so that is kind of where I get a little bit frustrated, which is he can't come out and say, ran a great race, totally understand why people are frustrated and why these DSA candidates are gaining traction. And I want to listen to them and have an idea of what is, making them gravitate towards these policies that I disagree with so much. Instead, he's saying, oh, I just can't be in the same party as these people. And ultimately, I think that that is going to be a big detriment to the Democratic Party if you start having moderate politicians saying, well, these people are crazy and we can't coexist with them, when these people are the ones that are generating so much excitement.
Well, but see, this is where I disagree with that. They aren't winning. There's 8. We're talking about 8 people who have won.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not like there's 30 candidates who are all DSA aligned. There's 8 out of 435. Or excuse me, 535. So, so to say that, oh, well, these people are the ones breaking through, they're making a lot of noise because the media is amplifying that they are running on crazy socialist agendas like abolishing Thanksgiving. So, but I don't think that that's saying, oh, these are winning messages. It's just these have broken through in 8 places. That's interesting for sure. And I agree with you that it is interesting that Jared, who is known to be a compromise guy, is uncompromising in this regard. But I don't think it's accurate based on the data to say these are the winning messages.
I just think that my personal opinion is that establishment Democrats like him, who have been in Congress now for a little bit and maybe represent sort of a more typical way of doing politics, should be paying attention to the fact that, yes, 100%, it's not like we're having DSA candidates and 50% of the races win. But what I think we're seeing is that there are policies like universal health care. There are policies that are galvanizing people. And even though maybe they're not winning everywhere, I feel like there is an excitement that Democrats have been lacking for a very long time around some of these candidates. And to discount that excitement and say that that excitement doesn't have a place in a party that has literally not had excitement for over a decade, like, I just think that that's a mistake. I think that there has to be a consensus of we can all coexist and we can all share ideas, and we may not always agree on everything, but unlike the Republicans, who are so beholden to, frankly, this one man, we can come up with a larger swath of policies and messages that are attractive to people without discounting the enthusiasm of our own Democratic voters. And to me, Jared Moskowitz needs to check himself. Maybe, and look, he's going to be in a general election. It's going to be very competitive. He needs to get a lot of independent and moderate Republican votes. I understand that. But I think the general rhetoric, and not just talking about him, the general rhetoric of, well, these, far left candidates or these voters are ruining the Democratic Party or they're crazy or whatever. I just think that ultimately that's going to do a disservice to the Democratic Party that needs an infusion of enthusiasm, even if that infusion of enthusiasm is coming from a place that some of these people might not like.
I hear what you're saying, and I think that it would be very stupid of the Democrats to discount the excitement that some of these candidates have created in their primaries.
Mm-hmm.
What I would contend, though, is that I think something to keep in mind is that primaries are, by definition, chum for the base.
Sure.
They feed the base, and they do not really take into account how is a general election going to fare, or how does this person going to fare in a general election. what is the appetite of like the overall wins, and can these candidates win their races? And I think I'm kind of two minds. I mean, I hear what you're saying, Anna, but I also think, like, going back to the emergence of the Tea Party, I think the Tea Party was one of the worst things to happen to the Republican Party. And I think the fact that it gained, there was so much oxygen given to that fire that I think the Republican Party, contrary to what I think they're known for, did not stamp out this fire when they had the chance. And I think, I'm going to sneeze.
Sneeze.
Achoo!
Bless you. Ooh, that was
Dolly.
loud.
That's Dolly saying to be nice. I think that they missed their chance to stamp out that fire, and subsequently, it gave rise to MAGA.
Oh, he's going to sneeze again.
Oh,
that's going to sound so good when people are listening.
Are you allergic to saying MAGA or something?
Yeah, he's like allergic to
I think
the
I am.
conversation. Oh my gosh.
I am.
What do you think, Anthony?
Yeah, that's what I said.
No, I'm about the actual thing we're talking about.
I think you guys really covered it in both of those
Oh my
speeches.
God, you're such a you're a boring co-host today. Anthony doesn't want to do any work to put in any sort of contribution.
Wow.
I think I said what I wanted on Moskowitz, and I think if he does not win, I think I might just quit politics altogether in our hope, because he's the exact type of politician that we need in our government.
Okay.
Well,
okay.
We'll see. Currently, it's a toss-up. It has a slight favorability toward Democrat. But, with this, my man Scott Singer of Boca Raton.
Oh, Boca,
you
baby.
never know what's possible.
Boca.
And is going to Ibiza later. Yeah.
Cheers. With the mayor of Boca.
With the mayor of Boca.
I can see it now.
Well, cheers, guys.
Cheers.
If you like what you're listening to or watching, please make sure you're subscribed or following wherever you get your podcasts. And we hope to see you back here next time. Tell your friends about us. Leave us a review. Leave us some stars. We're very appreciative for our audience, and we will see you guys soon.
Or we'll see you in Boca.